Today we're going to talk about the strongest recent rumors, leaks, and attention-grabbing details that have surfaced about the Elder Scrolls 6. From whether the game is really set in Hammerfell, to the possibility of sea travel and ship systems, to how larger cities could shape the direction of the story, we're going to go through all the major claims people are talking about most right now. Online, if you also want more The Elder Scrolls 6 content like this, you can support the channel by liking the video and subscribing. Let's get started. Right now, the strongest rumor is that the game will take place in Hammerfell, or maybe even along a Hammerfell high rock axis. This claim has been around for a long time, but recently it has gained serious momentum again. The reason for that is not just that the geography shown in the old teaser resembles those regions, but also that the Elder Scrolls community has for years believed these areas would be a perfect fit for the game in terms of Redguard culture, desert geography, coastal cities, and political conflict. If we really are heading to Hammerfell, that wouldn't just mean a new map. It would also mean Bethesda might be building a much more varied world this time, with different city architecture, port regions, desert fortresses, harsher climates, and maybe even a style of exploration much more tied to the sea. So after Skyrim's cold and mountainous atmosphere, we could be looking at a much hotter, harsher, and more exotic Elder Scrolls world. This is where the second most talked about rumor comes into play: ships, sea travel, and even naval combat. Recent leaks suggest that the game may not be just a classic open world, centered entirely on land, but could instead expand with much more varied mechanics like coastal exploration, island systems, ship usage, and naval battles. To be honest, that rumor sounds very ambitious, but at the same time, it also makes a lot of sense. Because if the game really is set in Hammerfell or along the Hammerfell high rock line, then it would be surprising if Bethesda limited that geography to just cities and deserts. Ideas like maritime trade, port culture, pirate-like factions, island quests, and even underwater exploration could fit this universe very naturally. If a system like that actually happens, it wouldn't just be a feature that makes the map bigger. It could become one of the biggest changes that completely transforms the game's overall sense of exploration. Another widely discussed claim is that the Elder Scrolls 6 will go much further than Skyrim in terms of city scale. Recent leaks mention 12 or 13 major cities, and that detail especially grabbed a lot of attention online. Because in Bethesda games, it matters just as much how alive the cities feel as how large the world is. We all love the cities in Skyrim, but honestly, some of them feel pretty small by today's standards. If this rumor is true, Bethesda may be aiming to design cities in TES 6 not just as hubs where we pick up quests, but as truly large settlements, where different social classes, cultures, and political structures all exist and interact. And that's actually one of the things I'm most curious about. Because in a series like Elder Scrolls, a large city does not just mean more buildings. It also means more guilds, more intrigue, more NPC routines, and a much stronger sense of a living world. On the gameplay side, the strongest expectation is that Bethesda will try to combine a freer character progression system with a smoother combat system. According to the rumors circulating, rigid class structures will once again be replaced by free progression, but this time the combat could be developed to feel heavier, more satisfying, and more modern. I think that's very important, because the greatest strength of the Elder Scrolls series has always been freedom, but one of its most criticized weaknesses has often been the feel of melee combat and combat in general. If Bethesda really learned from Starfield and its earlier games, then in TES 6 it may want to deliver not only a bigger world, but also a character system that is much more fun to actually play within that world. So people won't just be thinking, should I be a mage or an assassin? They'll also want those character playstyles to feel genuinely strong and satisfying. On the story side, the most attention-grabbing rumor is that the game could move in a darker, more political, and harsher direction. The biggest reason for that is that former Bethesda loremaster Kurt Kuhlman said years ago that in his own mind, he imagined the game more like The Empire Strikes Back. In other words, not more hopeful, but more tense. Not more focused on heroism, but more focused on the feeling of a major loss and a growing threat. That's why the possibility of the Thalmor returning to the center of the story has gotten much stronger lately. Because after Skyrim, that was already one of the biggest open political threads left in the series. If Bethesda really goes in that direction, The Elder Scrolls 6 could end up telling not just a new adventure story, but a much heavier breaking point story that changes the balance of Tamriel itself. This still is not an official confirmation, but it is definitely the story possibility that has been creating the most excitement in the community lately. Another major rumor is that dragons could return. Honestly, when I first heard that claim, it felt a little risky to me, because one of the biggest things people associate with Skyrim is dragons. Using the same idea again could feel a bit too safe to some players. But on the other hand, there is also the possibility that Bethesda could use them in a completely different way and on a very different scale. Maybe dragons would not be the heart of the main story this time, but instead become an element that affects the balance of power in certain parts of the world and shakes the old order again. especially if that's combined with a harsher geography like Hammerfell and larger city structures. The return of dragons might feel not nostalgic this time, but more destructive and more epic. Right now, this is completely at the rumor level, but the fact that it keeps appearing in the strongest rumor packages is definitely interesting. One of the most interesting possibilities people have been talking about lately is that Bethesda could add systems that let players build settlements or, more accurately, leave a mark on the world. The leaks going around mention fortress building, village building, and settlement-like systems. If that is true, we could see a much more natural, much more Elder Scrolls appropriate version of the building logic from Fallout 4. I think the potential for that is very high, because in a fantasy RPG, giving the player not just quests but also a place in the world, even a small one, creates a very powerful feeling. Developing your own fortress, protecting a small settlement, or gradually gaining influence over a certain region could build a far more lasting bond than traditional quest chains. Of course, the most important thing here would be whether Bethesda can integrate it into the spirit of the game. People don't just want a system for the sake of having a system. They want it to feel like a real part of the world. As for release timing, the dominant expectation has now shifted away from 2026 and more toward the 2027 or even 2028 range. Old FTC documents included wording like 2026 or later for the game, but Todd Howard's recent comments and the fact that Bethesda has only now started saying it is fully focusing on this project have created a more cautious mood in the community. So people are no longer thinking, the game gets revealed this year and comes out next year. On the contrary, most seem to have accepted that the game needs more time if it's going to arrive as something truly large, fully polished, and technically safer. And I think that is interesting, because after years of silence, the fandom for the first time seems less interested in rushing and more focused on, as long as this time it really arrives strong. In short, the current general feeling is that the game is in active production, but still not anywhere close to a near-release window. When we put all these rumors together, a really powerful picture starts to emerge. The Elder Scrolls 6 people imagine is a massive fantasy RPG set in Hammerfell, or along a Hammerfell high rock axis, with larger cities, sea travel, and ship systems that expand exploration, a harsher and more political story. Maybe the Thalmor returning to the center, dragons coming back in a different way, and at the same time more modern combat and freer character progression. Of course, none of this is something that will be confirmed tomorrow, but the strongest recent rumors show that this is exactly the kind of vision around which the game is being discussed. And honestly, as Bethesda's recent statements keep talking more and more about a return to the classic Bethesda spirit and about building a stronger foundation with Creation Engine 3, some of these rumors are starting to sound much more believable than they used to. When we think about the map side of things, if the Hammerfell or Hammerfell High Rock rumor is true, then this world could offer much more geographic variety than previous Elder Scrolls games. Because those regions are not made up of desert alone. They are full of coastal cities, harsh rocky regions, greener areas, border fortresses, ancient ruins, and settlements that are very different from each other culturally. That's why people think TES 6 won't just be a bigger map, but a world where the tone shifts much more dramatically from region to region. And I think that could be very important for the game's sense of exploration, because Skyrim had a very strong atmosphere, but its overall tone felt more unified. If the rumors are true, TES 6 could offer players a much broader cultural and geographic range. Expectations are also very high on the faction side, because when people think of Elder Scrolls, they don't just think of the main story. They also think of guilds, secret organizations, political sides, and regional power struggles. Recent story theories, especially combined with the idea that the Thalmor may once again become a major force, have made players start expecting a structure in TES 6, where we can make much harsher political choices. If Bethesda really is returning to its classic form, then we could see a system where multiple major factions are positioned against each other, and the player is not just someone completing quests, but someone who actually affects the balance of power. That would greatly increase replayability, because one of the most beloved things about the Elder Scrolls series has always been the ability to see the world from a different angle with each new character. When we look at the possible gameplay loop, a picture like this emerges. This time, Bethesda may not want to lock the player into just the triangle of main quest, side quest, and exploration. When you combine the possibility of ship systems, settlement or fortress building, major cities, and more systemic progression rumors, TES 6's gameplay loop could become much more layered. So while the player follows the main story on one hand, they could also build political relationships in cities, explore through the sea, increase their influence in a region, or follow very different paths in the world depending on their character build. If even half of that turns out to be true, the game may end up being not just a bigger Skyrim, but a much more alive fantasy sandbox that can keep people engaged for much longer. Another very important topic is mod support. Officially, TES6 mod tools have not been announced yet, but because of Bethesda's overall game philosophy and things Howard has said for years, the community is almost treating it as a certainty that this game will also be designed with a long-living mod ecosystem in mind. In fact, recent commentary has emphasized that Skyrim still being played today gives Bethesda a strong motivation to design TES6 as a game people will keep playing for at least 10 years. That's why many players believe TES6 should be thought of not only in terms of the content it launches with, but also as a platform that the modding community will expand over the years. And honestly, if Bethesda really wants to bring this series back to the top, then it needs to deliver stronger mod support than ever before. I think the biggest truth underneath all of this is this. With The Elder Scrolls 6, Bethesda won't just be releasing a new game, it will also be trying to redefine its own reputation. Because after Starfield, people no longer expect just a large world from the studio. They want more alive systems, stronger writing, more modern gameplay, and more consistent technical quality. When you combine the recent statements with the strongest rumors going around, the feeling that emerges is this. Bethesda cannot make TES 6 like an ordinary sequel. This game will need to carry the legacy of Skyrim while also making the series feel genuinely new for today's players. That's why all the major rumors circulating online right now are really converging into a single expectation. People are not just waiting for Elder Scrolls 6, they are waiting for Bethesda's big comeback game. So what are you hoping for most from The Elder Scrolls 6? Do you want the game to really be set in Hammerfell? Do you think sea travel and ship battles would fit the series? Or are you more interested in a strong story, large cities, and a return to the classic Elder Scrolls spirit? Be sure to write your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more The Elder Scrolls 6 videos like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because your support really matters if you want more content like this. See you in the next video.